that often that I end up doing a video about somebody on the left, because I am very much opinionated when it comes to solidarity. I would rather make sure that all of us can work towards a better future, and usually that involves uniting against conservatives. But sometimes there's a take that I just have a couple of issues with. So here we are. This is Kyle Kulinski, who runs a show called Secular Talk. And, well, I got some thoughts. So let's go ahead and play the clip, and we'll see where we're at. Take it away, Kyle.
Intersectional. By the way, no actual person in the real world uses that term unironically. It just doesn't happen. In elitist liberal academic circles, they might talk about this shit, but that's not a normal common person. It's not.
Okay, so right now he's talking about intersectionality, which is a topic that generally gets brought up in lefty circles. This is true. And the point seems to be largely that intersectionality is not something that is brought up in modern day speech. So I'm going to go ahead and make the assumption that Kyle's point would then follow. It would be better to not use those terms in conversation. I kind of disagree. I think using technical terms in conversation is perfectly fine and adequate when trying to explain something to someone, so long as you're willing to define that word as you use it. Because unless you define those words as you're using them, you will continue to hit the wall of people memeing on them. The right has memed on intersectionality for the last few years. And if you want an example of why I think this way, and it's mainly the fact that me and Kyle probably have very, very similarly aligned goals. We are both decently on the left. We both want workers' rights, as far as I know. We are both secular people. So maybe it'd be a good idea to frame this in that I have similar goals, and I want to work towards those goals. Let's talk about secularism for a sec. Let's talk about one of the conversations we have in atheist circles all the time. In chat, have you ever had a conversation with a creationist where you have had to define the word theory? Ever? Now, I'm sure that will probably be everybody in the chat all at once, because anybody who's been engaged in the anti-creationism conversation for any amount of time has had to have, at some point, a sit-down with a conservative or a creationist and gone, hey, when we say theory, we don't mean guess. We just don't mean it. That's not what we're trying to say. If you don't have that conversation, people will keep saying the theory of evolution is a guess about evolution. They will continue to say it. They will continue to misuse it. The idea about using these descriptive terms in normal speech is not to alienate people. It is to create an environment where these conversations are more normalized. You can't just say that the state of conversation is X, therefore use this. No. You can talk about better ways of using those terms, but those terms have utility. And if your argument's just going to be, which I assume it is, maybe I'm wrong, but if your argument's just going to be that those terms get memed on by the right, they're not used outside of, quote, liberal academia, well, then maybe they need to be moved from liberal academia and be moved into regular modern-day speech. The only people that can control that is us. We're the ones that talk. So, let's go ahead and continue the rest here. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm strawmanning. Let's find out.
There is nobody who's working a 9 to 5 and trying to pay the fucking bills who's also, thinking about intersectionality and being cisgender. That doesn't happen.
So wait, nobody who works 9 to 5 worries about their gender? Kyle, I don't think you're right about that. I feel like you're really, really out of touch with reality at that point. I know a lot of people who work their regular 9-to-5s and end up having issues where their gender is concerned. They end up wondering about it. Maybe I'm missing the point here, but that seems like a bad take. Just saying.
On top of bringing up intersectionality, she brings up the patriarchy. So now do you see what's going on here? And by the way, this is not going to stop. So this is the CIA's doing it, the FBI's going to do it, the Democratic Party has been doing it for the longest time. I'm not for Medicare for all. I'm not for free college. I'm not for a living wage. I'm not for ending the wars. I'm not for ending the drug war and freeing the nonviolent drug offenders. I'm not for any of the actual policies that are important and would fix the country and make everything better. But I will say the word intersectional.
Okay, so this is a point I agree with 110%. His points earlier, and again, without full context, maybe I'm misrepresenting. If somebody's seen the entirety of the show and I have gotten something wrong, let me know in the comments section below. But this point I agree with. The Democratic Party does do a lot of this. And no, Neko, he's not saying that he's not for Medicare for all. He's representing what the Democratic Party largely does, which is signal to people who have left-wing values use their language in a way that they will cheer for, and then, ostensibly, by doing so, create two problems. One, they aren't actually solving the issues inherent in the system. And two, they end up creating a world where those words feel like lefty words as opposed to academic words. Words like intersectional are part of a sociological deconstruction of reality. They are effectively scientific words. But by the Democratic Party taking those words and using them and then not doing anything worth a damn, which there are things that they are doing that is positive. I'm going to go and throw that out there right now. But to his point, by the Democratic Party using those words, they were already politicized to begin with, but of course by taking them, they get politicized even more so. They become no-no words for the right, even though they are literally fucking scientific words. I can see his point. I don't think that the Democratic Party should not use those words. I think that there's merit in using them, as I pointed out before. But I do think that there's issues with talking about that stuff and not doing something with them, not doing something to further the world that we've deconstructed sociologically that caused us to use those words in the first place. Again, people who are working their regular 9-to-5s do actually consider things like their gender. But let's continue Kyle's point, because I did find at least the one thing that I do agree with here, and that is that the Democratic Party largely does end up doing a lot of virtue signaling and then not doing enough, especially with what we've seen with these transgender bills coming out lately.
And I will give you my pronouns in my bio. And
okay, so the pronouns in your bio thing, completely okay. Like, let's say that there's a world where a Democrat is going to do nothing good for the world, and then there's a world where they will do nothing good for the world and also put their pronouns in the bio. As a net, that is a positive still, because that, at least in a very small amount, normalizes using your pronouns in everyday speech, which means you are normalizing spaces for trans people to exist. That's a good thing. Even if you were to take the argument wholesale that they're doing nothing correctly, that the Democratic Party is doing nothing correctly, by them doing stuff like that, they do normalize those spaces for trans folk, and it does create a better good. You also have to consider that nobody is putting pronouns in their bio as instead of doing something else. That takes none of your time. Nobody is putting their time into writing their Twitter bio instead of making the world a better place. The 3 seconds it takes to revise your Twitter bio isn't an argument at all.
And I will create an identity around my generalized anxiety disorder and make you feel like I'm relatable.
Okay, so there's a point here. There are people who will largely identify a lot with their disorders. Because their disorders are a part of them. If you're a paraplegic, that's a part of you that you have to deal with all the time. If you have depression, that's a part of you have to deal with all the time. If a Democrat is taking a lot of time to signal to their base using these identifiers instead of doing good, like this literally takes time away from them doing good, then I can see your point. But if they weren't going to be doing that good in either case, then I see it as a way of normalizing these things for other people, largely. But again, I don't know. I don't live in the heads of people in the Democratic Party. I can't sift around in their brain meats to see what they're doing, besides simping for the next load of cash they'll get from a lobbyist.
I will, say I'm on the LGBTQ spectrum, or I'm cisgender, or, I believe in diversity, and I have people of color in my family, or I'm a person of color. They will give you everything when it comes to labels, social issues. And by the way, it's hilarious that the CIA is doing the Democratic Party trick. I believe in diversity. I'm strong, I'm proud. I'm a daughter of immigrants, I'm a woman of color, I'm perfectly made. I'm proud of me. I'm a cisgender millennial. I have generalized anxiety disorder. I'm intersectional. I despise the patriarchy. And by the way, my main job is going to be to press the button on the drones that blows up innocent people overseas.
Okay, so again, we've hit the part where I actually agree with this clip. So, the very first part, I think worded incredibly poorly, worded very, very badly. Definitely, that first part alienates a lot of people in your audience. It alienated me as a viewer, trying to figure out how I even felt about this. But when you get to the end here, when you get here, his larger point seems to be that if somebody is virtue signaling and then not doing some actual good for people, not doing something that actually, like, betters somebody's lives, when you're a politician, and that's literally what your job is what you get paid to do, and you also happen to be, like, a fucking warhawk, then, yeah. And it does seem, Zephyros, it does seem like he is being a little overly cynical, but I feel like when you talk about politics for as long as Kyle has, then maybe that's just kind of where you end up. You just end up being a cynical person. I know that being on YouTube for the 3 years that I have has made me somewhat cynical. Not as cynical as others on the platform, but certainly I look at things a little more cynically than I used to. Not as charitably as I used to, just because of experience. So, I guess my main point here is I understand where he's coming from. I agree, but the beginning of this certainly gets worded out. And to that point, there is something that needs to be talked about here as well. If we look at what's happened here, Matthew Dimitri retweets this and goes, Kyle Kulinski derides diversity, pronouns, and being the cisgendered, intersectionality, and demonstrates ableism. So, yes, all of that stuff happened, 110%. Like, the first 30 seconds of this video was literally just that. And he only got to his greater point at the later part of the video. I don't know how to read this, though. On the one hand, if I'm reading this charitably, thanks for sharing, this is some of my best work. If I'm reading it charitably, then this is Kyle basically manhandling a troll, if he thinks that Matthew here is a troll, right? On the other hand, I could read this as somebody not seeing the oopsie in the clip. Because there's an oopsie in the clip. A quarter of this clip is a giant fucking oopsie. So, I don't know. And Zephyr just pointed out the first part alienated them, and they're a regular viewer of his. Like, again, I'm fairly certain me and Kyle have very aligned goals, and I'm hoping that with something like this is literally just not understanding why that first part is problematic, why that first part is something people would hold issue with. Because when you start alienating the part of your audience that cares about those things, and you're on the left, that's a decent chunk of your audience that's gone at that point. So I don't know. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comment section below. I think this is a different kind of topic, a different kind of conversation to have a little bit. Oh, wow, I don't have Sunset City behind me. I have Crisis City behind me. That's a bit awkward. Oh, well, it's fine. Consistency! Who needs it? Anywho, let me know what you think in the comment section below. I want to know your thoughts on all of this. Do you think Kyle could have worded this better? And if so, how so? Please remember, in this case, we're trying to engage in constructive criticism because I feel as though me and Kyle have very aligned goals. I don't want to turn this into a dunkathon. I'd rather this be constructive. Please and thank you. As always, everyone, insert end of video tagline here.